Styrene, also known as ethenylbenzene, vinylbenzene, and phenylethene, is an organic compound with the chemical formula C6H5CH equals CH2. This derivative of benzene is a colorless oily liquid that evaporates easily and has a sweet smell, although high concentrations confer a less pleasant odor. Styrene is the precursor to polystyrene and several copolymers. Approximately 25 million tons of styrene were produced in 2010. Occurrence, history, and use. Styrene is named for Styrax balsam, the resin of liquid amar trees of the Hamamelidaceae plant family. Styrene occurs naturally in small quantities in some plants and foods, and is also found in coal tar. In the 19th century, styrene was isolated by distillation of the natural Styrax balsam. The manufacture of styrene by dehydrogenation of ethenylbenzene was achieved in the 1930s. The production of styrene in the United States increased dramatically during the 1940s, when it was popularized as a feedstock for synthetic rubber. The presence of the vinyl group allows styrene to polymerize. Commercially significant products include polystyrene, ABS, styrene butadiene rubber, styrene butadiene latex, SIS, SEBS, styrene divinylbenzene, styrene acrylonitrile resin, and unsaturated polyesters used in resins and thermosetting compounds. These materials are used in rubber, plastic, insulation, fiberglass, pipes, automobile and boat parts, food containers, and carpet backing. Production: styrene is produced in industrial quantities from ethenylbenzene, which is in turn prepared on a large scale by alkylation of benzene with ethylene. Dehydrogenation of ethenylbenzene. Styrene is most commonly produced by the catalytic dehydrogenation of ethenylbenzene. Ethenylbenzene is mixed in the gas phase with 10^15 times its volume in high-temperature steam, and passed over a solid catalyst bed. Most ethenylbenzene dehydrogenation catalysts are based on iron oxide, promoted by several percent potassium oxide or potassium carbonate. Steam serves several roles in this reaction. It is the source of heat for powering the endothermic reaction, and it removes coke that tends to form on the iron oxide catalyst through the water-gas shift reaction. The potassium promoter enhances this decoking reaction. The steam also dilutes the reactant and products, shifting the position of chemical equilibrium towards products. A typical styrene plant consists of 2 or 3 reactors in series, which operate under vacuum to enhance the conversion and selectivity. Typical per-pass conversions are circa 65% for 2 reactors and 70 to 75% for 3 reactors. Selectivity to styrene is 93 to 97%. The main byproducts are benzene and toluene. Because styrene and ethenylbenzene have similar boiling points, their separation requires tall distillation towers and high return reflux ratios. At its distillation temperatures, styrene tends to polymerize. To minimize this problem, early styrene plants added elemental sulfur to inhibit the polymerization. During the 1970s, new free radical inhibitors consisting of nitrated phenol-based retarders were developed. More recently, a number of additives have been developed that exhibit superior inhibition against polymerization. However, the nitrated phenols are still widely used because of their relatively low cost. These reagents are added prior to the distillation, improving conversion and so reducing the amount of ethenylbenzene that must be separated is the chief impetus for researching alternative routes to styrene. Other than the POSM process, none of these routes like obtaining styrene from butadiene have been commercially demonstrated. Via ethylbenzene hydroperoxide, commercially styrene is also co-produced with propylene oxide in a process known as POSM or SMPO for styrene monomer/propylene oxide. In this process ethylbenzene is treated with oxygen to form the ethylbenzene hydroperoxide. This hydroperoxide is then used to oxidize propylene to propylene oxide. The resulting 2-phenylethanol is dehydrated to give styrene. Laboratory synthesis. A laboratory synthesis of styrene entails the decarboxylation of cinnamic acid. Styrene was first prepared by this method. Other methods. Styrene can be produced from toluene and methanol, which are cheaper raw materials than those in the conventional process. Historically, however, this process has suffered from low selectivity due to competing decomposition of methanol. Exelis Incorporated claims to have developed this process with commercially viable selectivities, at 400-425 AA degrees Celsius and atmospheric pressure, by forcing these components through a proprietary zeolitic catalyst. It is reported that an approximately 9:1 mixture of styrene and ethenylbenzene is obtained, with a total styrene yield of over 60%. Another developing route to styrene is via benzene and ethane. This process is being developed by Snorm-Pregeti SPA and Dow. Ethane, along with ethenylbenzene, is fed to a dehydrogenation reactor with a catalyst capable of simultaneously producing styrene and ethylene. The dehydrogenation effluent is cooled and separated and the ethylene stream is recycled to the alkylation unit. The process attempts to overcome previous shortcomings in earlier attempts to develop production of styrene from ethane and benzene, such as inefficient recovery of aromatics, production of high levels of heavies and tars, and inefficient separation of hydrogen and ethane. Development of the process is ongoing. Health effects. Styrene is regarded as a hazardous chemical, especially in case of eye contact, but also in case of skin contact, of ingestion and of inhalation, according to several sources. Styrene is largely metabolized into styrene oxide in humans, resulting from oxidation by cytochrome P450. Styrene oxide is considered toxic, mutagenic, and possibly carcinogenic. Styrene oxide is subsequently hydrolyzed in vivo to styrene glycol by the enzyme epxide hydrolase. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has described styrene to be a suspected toxin to the gastrointestinal tract, kidney, and respiratory system, among others. On June 10, 2011, the U.S. National Toxicology Program has described styrene as reasonably anticipated to be a human carcinogen. However, a Stats author describes a review that was done on scientific literature and concluded that the available epidemiologic evidence does not support a causal relationship between styrene exposure and any type of human cancer. Despite this claim, work has been done by Danish researchers to investigate the relationship between occupational exposure to styrene and cancer. They concluded, the findings have to be interpreted with caution, due to the company-based exposure assessment, but the possible association between exposures in the reinforced plastics industry, mainly styrene, and degenerative disorders of the nervous system and pancreatic cancer, deserves attention. The Danish EPA recently concluded that the styrene data do not support a cancer concern for styrene. The US EPA does not have a cancer classification for styrene, but currently is evaluating styrene's cancer-causing potential through its EPA Integrated Risk Information System program. The U.S. National Toxicology Program of the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services also currently is evaluating styrene's potential toxicity to date. No regulatory body anywhere in the world has classified styrene as a known human carcinogen, although several refer to it in various contexts as a possible or potential human carcinogen. The International Agency for Research on Cancer considers styrene to be possibly carcinogenic to humans. Chronic exposure to styrene leads to tiredness, lethargy, memory deficits, headaches and vertigo. Bioremediation, the yeast-like fungi Exophyllogene celmu can be used to treat air polluted with styrene. References. External links, CDC, Styrene, NIOSH Workplace Safety and Health Topic, Safety and Health Topics Styrene.